Hi, Nancy. How are
I,
you?
I'm good, Keith. How are you? Doing well.
I'm really good. And as I was saying to you a little earlier, I'm so thankful that you're doing this for the Center of Wellbeing and also for everyone's well-being. It's Nancy's Nourishing Food, and what we're going to be talking about is food and how to eat well, not crazy. And we have I think, a very exciting show or segment about food and about one of the ingredients that I think in food that is mostly overlooked a lot of times, but I really believe really makes a huge difference in the way food tastes and what you actually get. So can you tell me and tell everyone else what we're going to talk about?
We're going to talk about some sauces and flavor boosters. Very simple condiments and things we most likely have in the pantry that will elevate a dish without anything being crazy, complicated, too professional, chefy, nothing to do with fine dining, everything that you can do in home that'll make your home cooking taste like a restaurant dish, in my
So
opinion.
sauce
Saucy.
and flavor boosters. I like that.
Exactly.
Flavor boosters. It's I always feel like I'm doing like I'm in science class with you. It's just great. It's fantastic. So what is that? What are sauces? Because I think, yeah, if everyone else is like me, I think of sauce as either tomato sauce or although Italians would say no, it's gravy, and or sauces being brown gravy sauce. So is that what it is, or is it more than that? Tell us a little bit more.
It's definitely more than that. So sauces add different dimensions to a dish. So we're going to share recipes for two sauces, an onion sauce and a vegan gringata sauce, later, and we can talk about it. But sauces don't have to be, I mean, I grew up calling red sauce gravy, and it was brown gravy or red gravy. You think of sauces, you think of cream sauces, say in French cooking. Doesn't have to be that. It really can be anything. So sauces add texture to a dish. So if you want to even think about a tomato sauce, it can be smooth, it can be chunky, you can taste the bits of tomatoes or peppers in it. So when you bite into something, whether it's chicken or a burger or a vegetable, you have that texture, and it's just different. It's a different mouthfeel, and it makes things definitely more appealing. Sauces add flavor, so you can elevate roasted vegetables or again, a piece of chicken or a piece of fish with condiments that just add an additional dimension of flavor. They add moisture or juiciness. So my favorite that we're going to share is this vegan gringata sauce that tastes amazing on a veggie burger or a salmon burger or even a hamburger. I was telling you earlier, my kids take the leftover sauce and they put it in a wrap with their eggs in the morning and make a vegetable burrito. So anything that's grilled or really kind of dry, it adds moisture and juiciness. And then it's visual. We all hear the phrase, we eat with our eyes first.
Mhm.
So when you have something, again, I'm all about simple home cooking. So can you have something simple like a piece of grilled fish? If you've got a chunky Romanesco sauce on it, which is pretty much tomatoes, peppers, it's almost anything you have, it looks really pretty. Or this vegan gringata sauce is green. So you've got a bright green sauce on top of something that may be kind of brown or bland, and it makes it pop and it makes everything more appetizing. So sauces add a lot of different components to a dish in a very simple way.
So the thing that you're saying, and the keywords that kind of came up for me were, boost, enhance, and what I hear what I think a lot of people do, and myself included, I have done in the past. I'm doing less of it now in my old age, is sort of use sauce as a way to, not mask, but in essence, like the more tomato sauce, the better, because or I could even drink the sauce. It was just like one of those things. But
Right.
you're really saying it's not there it may be, it's not the main event, but what it does is it provides the sizzle to the steak, if you will. It,
Absolutely.
no, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, good. So it
that's
really
yeah.
it really helps you to taste the food more, not less. Whereas I think more people use sauce as a way to sort of mask and cover up.
Exactly. Well, you've seen plain pasta drowned in, say, a tomato sauce, whereas, if you listen to Italian cooks, the sauce is really the condiment, to the pasta. You don't want that drowning in sauce. So a little bit goes a long way. If you've ever even been in a restaurant and there's that, smear of something, if you will, on the bottom of the plate, and then everything's kind of, piled up on top of it, but you get a little bit of sauce with a little bit of bite of everything else on your plate, and it just tastes good. And sometimes you can't even pinpoint it. You just like, wow, that plain old piece of fish
Right,
tastes that much better.
right.
So you're right,
Pop,
it's a
pop
boost.
even more, pop even
Hmm.
more. That's great. So when we start thinking about that, are there, I think you talked about profiles one time, flavor profiles, and then you talked about some key ingredients often that are put together, to go ahead and create something. So talk to us a little bit more about the sort of flavor profiles or the boosters that you've got around there, and maybe how we might, kind of use stuff in the house to kind of hit on that, if you will. You with me?
One that we talked about is that Asian profile, tamari, which is a gluten-free soy sauce or soy sauce. So that is great in any kind of sauces or dressing, and that adds an Asian flavor profile. Especially, you can add some garlic and some ginger. You can make, we talked about marinades last week, and any of those marinades can kind of be reduced to a sauce. It's a great balance of flavors because it kind of has that salty, umami kind of flavor, which people talk about as the fifth taste. So it's also really good in marinades because it adds that acidic balance. Something we probably all have in our house are capers. Capers are salty, they're briny, they are a great balance in food. So if you're balancing, the salty and the acidic, and there's a little bit of sweet in something, and again, it rounds out the flavors to make things complete. It's also great with, say, tofu or vegetables or pasta, and you can use anything that has that briny kind of flavor. So if you don't have capers, you can use olives, you can use marinated artichokes, even pickles. People have made their own dressings and thrown in chopped up little pickles, and it just adds a pop. Sun-dried tomatoes. I don't know, I always have sun-dried tomatoes in the house. I have them packed in oil, and I also have them dry. I don't use them as often as I do. I probably bought them for one specific recipe, which I think a lot of us maybe do. You buy a condiment for a recipe, and then it's in the pantry or the fridge and you don't know what to do with it. They're good because they have that savory kind of flavor, so you can add them to anything. Puree them in a vinaigrette or chop them fine, throw them in a soup, toss them on a pasta, layer them on a sandwich. And then one we were talking about also that maybe a lot of people don't have, but it's easy to find, is a miso. And miso is, again, that Asian profile. It's fermented soybean paste, and it adds that deep, rich, like fifth flavor. And that's great to throw in a dressing. It's great to throw in a soup. And if anybody is avoiding soy, there are other different misos. So I also like a chickpea miso. So it's made from chickpeas instead of soy. And that all can be found in the refrigerated section where, the sauerkrauts are and the kimchi and the tofu, like that. We talked
Right.
briefly, Patty, about soups. I make a cauliflower soup and you throw a little miso paste in blended cauliflower, changes, and it's delicious. So all in simple ways.
Great. One of the things that, I like miso. We have it in the fridge, and it lasts for a long time, and it's great for a fallback if you even want to use it for making a quick soup or throwing some noodles in there and some veggies. And then I didn't think about it in terms of, how to go ahead and mix it in as a sauce. So that's exciting. Then the other thing that you talked about was the tamari sauce. So you can really use soy sauce as that's kind of tamari in some way, right?
Yeah,
Same
it's the
thing?
same thing. Tamari, soy sauce is made with wheat. Tamari is not. So tamari is gluten-free. So a lot of people who avoid gluten will have tamari. So it tastes the same to me, depending on the brand, but one has wheat and one doesn't. So they're
Right.
really interchangeable.
And it's interesting, at one point we had some tapenade and, I had it in the fridge. We bought it for a party. And then I thought, okay, well, I want to use this before it goes bad. And I did that. I used it as an add-on to a sauce that I was making. And I was surprised how wonderful it was, so,
Yeah,
it's
you can
interesting.
just, and sometimes you can have just a little left over and you add it to something else
Hmm,
and it just changes the flavor. And now you have a completely different dish. So yeah, tapenade is
right,
one of my favorites. And that's got the olives in it.
right, right.
So that
Um,
has that.
Yep.
Nancy, don't forget about the vegan green goddess sauce. I wanted to know how to make that. I think she froze.
Keep, I can't hear anybody.
I can't hear you.
All right,
Okay,
now,
there you go. We
Now
can
you're
hear you.
good. You're
We
good.
can
Quick,
hear you
give it
now.
to us.
now we're back.
Now you're back. Okay, good, good. So I put myself on mute so we could hear you, Nancy, but then you're freezing every once in a while. Like right now, you're frozen again, which is okay because you're frozen with a wonderful smile, Nancy. You had a smile, wonderful smile. So you
All
still
right.
with us, Nancy? You with us?
I'm still there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. You came out of
I'm
your
still
smile.
here. Okay. I don't know. I can't blame it on the weather. It's beautiful. It's not windy. It's gorgeous
Where are you? Where are you, Nancy?
here. So I have no idea what I'm out on the North Fork in Orient on the east end of Long Island. So we have a second home here, and this is where we've been hiding out for the past 2 months.
So Nancy, a question, because I think it's the big rage and the big question, certainly in terms of the vegan or the vegan green goddess. Do you
Yes.
say vegan or do you say vegan?
I say vegan.
Yeah, there you go. So what
Vegan.
about the vegan green goddess? That sounds absolutely wonderful. Tell us.
We had it the other night. It's our go-to. So it's made of avocado, some garlic, a lot of fresh herbs. The recipe we're going to share has parsley and basil, but you really could. I made it the other night, didn't have any basil, but I had a lot of parsley, um, some chives or the green part of a scallion. And then you need the pop. So it's lemon juice, olive oil, salt, pepper, and a little apple cider vinegar to taste. And everything gets thrown up into a food processor and you have this rich, creamy, beautiful green sauce because everything's blended together. A lot of recipes you'll find on the internet calls for dairy. So you'll see yogurt or sour cream in a green goddess sauce. You don't need it. Like the avocado alone adds the creaminess. And I was saying to Keith earlier, I had roasted garlic in my fridge. So I used the roasted garlic instead of the raw garlic in the green goddess sauce, and it added a mellow flavor. So you can do that as well. It all depends on whether you want the roasted garlic taste or the raw garlic. But it's simple. It's not really a lot of measuring. And you just throw everything in a food processor, and it goes on anything.
It sounds absolutely lovely and incredible. So we got 1 to 2 ripe avocados, and I want to remember because now is the time to talk about avocados and guacamole. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm like a big guac fanatic. I love guac. And then the garlic, you said 1 garlic clove, grated or chopped, depending upon how you like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got 1 cup of fresh parsley, 1/4 cup of fresh basil, 1/4 cup of fresh chives or scallions, 1 juice of the lemon, sea salt and fresh pepper to taste, and then only 1/4 cup of virgin olive oil. So that's all you need is the 1/4 cup. I would imagine that it would be really kind of chunky with a quarter cup?
No, you drizzle it. Sometimes I don't even use a quarter of a cup. A quarter cup is really only 3 tablespoons. It's not a lot of oil,
Mm.
but you don't want a thin, runny sauce. So there's enough liquid in it with the juice of the lemon. And if you add a little of the extra virgin olive oil, and the avocado is really creamy.
Mm.
So the olive oil really just brings it together. And you can use more if you like. You can use less if you like. It all depends on what kind of a texture you like. We personally like a thicker sauce. So it's pillowy, if you will, almost like the texture of yogurt, that,
Oh, that sounds great.
fluffy kind of texture. But if you wanted it thinner, by all means, add more olive oil. If you add too much, the olive oil is going to separate out anyway. So you really don't need a lot of olive oil at all.
Got it. Got it. And then the apple cider vinegar, that's probably going to give it a nice add on and a little bit pop the citrus and everything. So it's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that I put to taste, the original recipe I saw had measurements and I found it was too much. So this is really all to taste. And again, if you have dill or cilantro, any fresh herbs you have, throw it in. It's
all right. So you invited the question when you said cilantro. So cilantro, avocado, and we're talking about guac now. So what's your recipe for guac? Tomato?
Again,
you throw tomato? Any
I
tomato?
throw tomato. I like
You
tomato
do.
in my guac.
Seeds or no seeds?
Doesn't matter. It depends on if I'm lazy or not.
Okay. All right. So avocado, cilantro, red onions or regular onions?
I like red onions.
Red
I'll give you a red onion tip, and probably goes for any red onion. You're going to serve a raw onion, soak it in ice water for 10 to 15 minutes, especially the red onion. It takes the bite out of it a little bit. So I prefer it that way. So while you're chopping everything up, let it soak in some ice water. And
some ice water. Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So chop it up, throw it in ice water, then throw it in.
Then throw it in.
Yeah, throw it.
Salt, pepper, lemon juice or lime juice, depends. I usually like lime in my guacamole, but I don't always have fresh limes. I always have fresh lemons. Salt, pepper, and lots of cilantro. Lots of fresh
cilantro.
herbs.
Now, I'll tell you one thing that I throw in my guacamole, which is the chipotle pepper sauce. I put a little bit in there of chipotle pepper sauce. It gives it a little bit of a smoky kick, hot smoky kick flavor.
Absolutely. That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
And thinking about it, if anybody doesn't have the smoked chipotle peppers in the house and you have smoked paprika, you can sprinkle a little bit of that in and it will give the smoky flavor if you don't have those peppers. So never feel like you're married to that recipe completely.
And again, guacamole is one of those dishes one of those items that you can throw on a burger, you can throw on just about anything, right?
Absolutely. It's not just for chips, and it's really healthy. So it's really great instead of, I think about that French onion dip of my youth, but it's great with crudité. So if you've got cut up vegetables, dip it in the guac. It's healthier than the chips.
Right. I like that. And then the other food that you had here, the sauce, which is, as I said to you, I'm a bit of a peasant. I like root vegetables and potatoes and stuff like that. But this sounded absolutely wonderful. I have been known to take a whole bag of onions and cook a whole bag of onions at one time, slice them all up and then just make so red onion or roasted onion sauce. Oh my God. Tell me about that.
So this one, we're roasting onions. So you're cutting onions and cutting them into peeling them and keeping them in thick slices and roasting them in a 400-degree oven on a parchment lined baking sheet until they get caramelized. If you want to do a whole batch, great. You can caramelize them in a pan on the stove as well. They take a long time and you're just stirring. So I wanted everybody to know you can just throw this in the oven and forget about it. But you want to let them go into that deep, rich, brownish kind of flavor and they get super soft. And again, you're throwing it afterwards into a food processor with a little bit of maple syrup and a little bit of the whole grain Dijon mustard and a little bit of olive oil just to blend it all up. And now you have this rich, creamy sauce. If you like it a little chunkier and you want a little more texture, it doesn't have to be pureed. But that's something that you can toss or put on a burger. I guess I was thinking about summer and grilling and and veggie burgers and stuff with the roasted onions and things like that. But you can make it smooth. You can toss it with vegetables, toss it with pasta, any kind of noodles. And the maple syrup and the mustard just give it a balance to that caramelized roasted onion flavor. And it's not a lot of sweetness. So you're not talking about a ton of sugar.
So you just solved a bit of a riddle for me, which is, you know, getting the caramelized onions brown. I mean, I did some onions a couple of weeks ago, and I had them on the stove, and I was cooking them and cooking them and cooking them and cooking them and cooking them, and I couldn't get them like really brown. I mean, you know, I like that dark brown kind of texture. You're saying like take the onions, put them on parchment paper, and just throw them in the oven and let them sit there for a while. Now, how long? I mean, if I did a few, if I did like I do, if I do 5 or 6 onions, you know, would that take like an hour or 2, or how long would that take?
Not that long. If you're going to do it on a 400-degree oven, it should probably maybe take a half an hour.
Really?
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long. You know, it depends on how your oven is. It depends on how many onions you have in there. Periodically go in and stir them around so it's even until they're as brown as you like it. And as far as the stove, it does take a long time. I mean, you do have to be patient. You have to be patient.
No, I mean, I'm a pretty patient guy, but you know, I was talking to the onions.
Yeah.
I'm just glad they didn't answer back, because you can imagine what they would have said.
Yeah. It shouldn't take that long. If you want that deep color, leave them in longer. So it's really, but it's you don't have to babysit your onions if you throw them in the oven, which is why I wanted people to know it doesn't have to be so labor intensive.
Now, this is what I mean about, you know, being a chemist, a bit of a scientist, because, you know, I would never think that you would take maple syrup and add it to Dijon mustard to go ahead and get a dish that was actually flavorful, that actually had good flavor to it. But you're saying it balances it out and gives it some richness, right?
Exactly. You could use honey if you wanted to use honey. So maple syrup and honey are my 2 natural sweeteners. So it depends on what you have or what you want, but maple syrup and honey are pretty much interchangeable. But you think about that harsh, because I kind of think of mustard as having a bit of a bite, you know, and the honey or the maple syrup just balances it all out. And always taste as you go. So again, with recipes, everybody wants a measurement. So I've got to put them down, but I don't think I ever really stick to that measurement. Sometimes maybe you throw too much vinegar in something and you really need a little more sweet to balance it out. So taste along the way. But, you know, think about the honey Dijon mustard you can see in the store. Well, you can make your own. It's the same theory. And then you have that richness of the caramelized onions, and it just very smooth.
So Dijon mustard, like Grey Poupon, is that like, or can we use any Dijon?
You can use any Dijon.
Okay, doesn't have to be like the whole grain, like the ones that have the. All right, so any Dijon will do.
Any Dijon. I think I wrote on the recipe whole grain again, just because it's a little deeper and richer, whereas the light Dijon, but use whatever mustard you have, whatever you like.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. Sounds great. So we've got a couple of minutes left for this segment, and I'd like to open it up to some questions. Phil, you're on.
Oh, thanks. Nancy, I love the recipe, but my question is, how much maple syrup or honey are you putting in, and how much mustard? Is there a ratio?
So we're going to post the recipe.
Okay.
There is a tablespoon of maple syrup and 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. So that was the ratio. And there was also a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil in there as well. So it's not a ton. Dijon mustard has a bite, which is why there's probably a little bit more maple syrup. So try it that way. And you can always try with a little bit first and add, because you can always add, you can't take away.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you suggest in terms of where would this go? Would this go on a pasta, or would it be more like a meat add-on, or what would you suggest?
anything. It would taste great on a regular hamburger. It would taste great on grilled chicken. It would taste really nice on a piece of grilled fish, you know, a light fish, right? Something that's not going to compete. So you're not talking about, you know, an oily bluefish or something, but a flounder, even a little bit on piece of flounder. Any vegetable on the planet would taste good with roasted onions, I think, and it'll add a little bit of sweetness. Think about maybe even the cauliflowers and stuff like that, and any kind of pasta would be great. There's just a different kind of sauce.
Great, great. Yeah, I could see this on some rigatoni or something like that. That sounds sounds pretty good to me. And then, you know, you throw on some add-ons. And with the other items that you threw in, those flavor boosters, those are just sort of flavor boosters. They're not like core ingredients for sauces, right?
No, they're just, you're adding a little bit. So miso is strong. So you're only adding a teaspoon to a tablespoon of miso, depending on how much of the other ingredients you have. Same thing with soy sauce. If any kind of marinade, you know, you're seeing a few tablespoons, a quarter cup at the most, depending on what else you're adding in, usually oils. Capers are very strong. If you've ever used them, you only need a little bit. And sun-dried tomatoes you could probably use more of because they're not a super strong flavor. They just add more of a richness and a meatiness. So they're all, again, just what it says, a boost, just a little bit, just like acid, right?
So
you know?
So you could do a pasta, throw in a few capers, some sun-dried tomatoes, and you'd be in business with a little bit of oil, and that's it.
Yep, and that's it.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. So fantastic. Any other questions that might come up from anyone? No, I think we're pretty good. And I think this is our segment 5 or segment 6, or I'm not sure where we are. I've lost track in this. Segment 5. I think it said we got a hand up. Say Patty said it was segment 5.
Segment 5. Okay.
So that's good. So and then next week we're going into segment 6. But do you have any ideas as to what we're going to talk about then? And you know, where are we going to take this?
I was playing around. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and then everything else seems to take precedence. I'm still playing around with that savory breakfast idea. What do you guys think?
Savory breakfast. I like that idea. Yeah, getting out of the ho hum drum cereal box mentality.
We don't realize that in other parts of the world, a savory breakfast is common. Like in Japan, you know, all the kids, they have miso soup and rice. If that's it.
Yes.
Yeah, and India too. It's whatever was left over from the night before. Sometimes I'll make quinoa. And then I have that for breakfast, you know, my last night's dinner. I like that idea.
You do? Okay. Like I was thinking, you know, we all have a bowl of oatmeal, but we're throwing some honey or some maple syrup on it and some sweet raisins. So I was thinking, right, oatmeal with sauteed greens and sauteed mushrooms and throw an egg on it. Now you have a savory breakfast that's going to keep everything balanced. So I was playing around with that idea. But if you guys want to see or learn anything else, you know, I love suggestions. We can always find something to talk about.
My son sent me a Snapchat. Apparently, you know, Snapchat's very popular, but he sent me a Snapchat this morning. Yeah, and I'm learning, but he sent me a Snapchat this morning of his breakfast. And, you know, his breakfast was he took an avocado, took the pit out of the avocado, and then had it still in its shell, and then he made eggs. He put eggs in the center of each of the shells. So he had 2 eggs that were then put in the oven, and they were roasted or baked. And then he had bacon on top of that, but he added in some fancy sauce and stuff. He said, "My breakfast," and then I sent him the picture of my breakfast was with a shake. Yeah.
A shake.
Yeah, but wait a minute. How could you bake an avocado? I never thought of that.
I don't know. I don't know what he did. Or maybe he just took the eggs and he put them in a thing, you know. But yeah, he's a bit of a wild man, my son. You can imagine.
I have not seen that one, nor have I tried it, but now I'm intrigued. I'm gonna have to look that up and see how
Yeah,
that
and then
goes.
he followed it up with a big fat belly meme, you know, of him sort of with his head that, you know, only happens on Instagram, you know, where he's doing this big dance. And I said, okay, I'm not going to go there. I said, you know, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So savory breakfast for next week, some savory stuff, and an opportunity to learn even more from you, Nancy, at Nancy's Nourishing Food. So how do people get a hold of you again?
My email is Nancy Ferraris, Ferraris @me.com. And my website is nancysnourishingkitchen.com. And the recipes are also posted on the center site, and they're also posted on my site on the Center for Wellbeing page. So you can find them in a couple of different places.
Fantastic. And I'm Keith Fiveson, and people can reach me as well at kfiveson, Fiveson, at workmindfulness.com. And I think this has been absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much, Nancy, for your time. And thanks everyone else for joining in.
My pleasure. Patty and Phil, love seeing you every week. It's
Love
great.
coming. Thank you so much for your time, and thank both you and Keith for everything.